Doom was arguably the first style of metal, and now it's a broad genre that's sometimes used as an umbrella for a range of styles that have developed since. From traditional doom to epic doom, from stoner metal to sludge, a lot of popular metal genres have grown out of the styles of musicianship captured by Black Sabbath on albums like Paranoid and Master of Reality. Doom's one of my favorite styles of metal, which is part of why I decided to start my series on metal exploring it, but this time I want to look at some of what I think are today's best doom bands. The ones I find the most exciting and unique, and the ones I just find the most fun to listen to. I'll cover some bands from a lot of Doom's subgenres, and I ran through what most of those subgenres are in the previous video, but we'll be taking a quick look at another subgenre in this video that I didn't mention at all in the last one, so there'll be a bit more metal history in this one too. I'm Michael, and this is Eclecticism, a love letter to music. So this video doesn't pick up right after the last one. There are definitely some great bands who came after the 90s that I won't be covering here because they're just not quite new enough. But that's what the comment section's for. If I didn't talk about your favorite band instead of just saying, this asshole forgot to talk about Yob, actually just tell people how great Yob is, maybe talk about which is their best album to start with. Make the comment section a resource for those looking into Doom as well. Most of these bands have released an album I love since about 2020, but with that said, I'm covering a couple that go back earlier than that because I just really want to talk about them for one reason or another. I don't include musical samples because YouTube has terrible and inconsistent policies about that kind of thing, but you can find a playlist link in the description that includes all of the bands I talk about here, so you can watch those right here on YouTube or on Apple Music. We'll start our journey in Sweden. Monolord is a three-piece from Göteborg who formed in 2013. Thomas Jaeger and drummer Esben Willems were both members of a band called Marulk, and they decided to make a side project focused more on the doomy riffs they'd been enjoying working on while jamming with Marulk. And what was planned as a side dish ended up becoming the main course quite quickly. Monolord started gaining a lot of popularity with their debut album. Their debut album, Empress Rising, was slow and heavy stoner doom, and it was quickly embraced by fans of these styles. Some stoner metal can, for me, just feel too formulaic and repetitive, but despite a lot of repetitive riffing, Monolord provides enough variation and a unique enough take on their approach, especially with the vocals. They're neither clean nor growled, they feel a bit spacey with some effects used on them, and it feels a bit otherworldly. I want to focus on their debut, Empress Rising, because I feel like it's a great place to start with them. But they've been relatively consistent with 4 more albums since then. I haven't found any of them to be a drastic reinvention or a dramatic drop-off. Their debut is still my favorite as of right now, although this might be because it's the one I've still spent the most time with out of all their releases. But I do recommend exploring this spacey and psychedelic take on doom. Another of the modern masters of stoner doom is from Richmond, Virginia. Windhand is a 4-piece who formed in 2008. They started as a 3-piece, but in 2009 were joined by Dorthia Cottrell on vocals. This is some wonderfully gloomy yet groovy doom, and Dorthia's soft yet sinister vocals really help to create a unique mood. Dorthia also has a solo career I'd recommend looking into if you like dark folk music. It should surprise nobody who's been following this channel for a while that I'm a big fan of an album called Death Folk Country. Windhand caught a lot of attention with their second album, Soma, and that's the album I first started getting into them, but I think they've improved with their last two, Grief's Infernal Flower and Eternal Return. Eternal Return from 2018 is the main one I'm going to highlight here, but I'm also going to kind of break my own self-imposed rules for this video and say Doom fans are going to just like both of these a lot. Eternal Return feels like it sometimes leans more into a slowed down grunge, like on the opening track, Halcyon. There's also a bit more exploring psychedelia on this, although it's mainly heavy bluesy riffs and solos, and the always powerful voice of Cottrell that makes this album really powerful to me. Their 2 most recent albums were both produced by Jack Endino, a legend of Seattle music who's worked with Nirvana, Mudhoney, Tad, Soundgarden, Babes in Toyland, L7, The Gits, The Accused, High on Fire, Flipper, Mark Lanigan, and also the next band on this list. And he was also a member of a great Seattle band that most people sleep on called Skinyard. I've talked about Skinyard a bit in my video on grunge beyond the big 4. I definitely recommend checking them out if you are interested in grunge or harder rock. In the last video, I mentioned that Elder was one of the first bands that I really was drawn to exploring as I was getting into modern metal. Windhand is another of those bands that really immediately caught my interest and became a fast favorite. They resonate if you're coming from being into other less extreme rock or metal, although if you like your music fast, probably not the best place to start. Of course, if you like your music fast, doom is probably the last subgenre you're going to want to dive into anyway. But either way, there's a reason Windhand has become a big name in modern doom. They write great songs, and they manage to be a relatively good gateway metal band as well. But they also provide music that those deeper into doom still appreciate. So those two are a little bit older, but now let's jump ahead to 2019 for an album that's coming from what used to be a local band for me. Year of the Cobra are a husband and wife duo from Seattle, Washington. Unlike a lot of musical couples, the two were in separate bands when they first got together, got married, and then had a daughter. When they moved to Seattle as a family, they didn't yet know any local musicians, so that's when they began really playing together. And although they initially planned to expand the band beyond just the two of them, eventually they realized they liked the challenge and the limitations of making doom with just bass, vocals, and drums. Having formed in 2015, they play a traditional and sometimes psychedelic feeling style of doom. On their second album, Ash and Dust, they craft an impressively varied album. While very doom-laden, it also occasionally veers into sounding psychedelic and at one point even a bit punk. The vocals of Amy Tung Berry-Smith pull you right into the mood of the music. It's very dark and powerful. And like I said, if there's one thing I can struggle with in doom, it's when bands just stick to the same sound for way longer than they need to. Year of the Cobra really never does this. They write songs that are concise by doom standards, and this may or may not be a selling point for you, but I've got things to do. And I like it when a band leaves me wanting more, not dragging it on until there are no ideas they can still milk out of this song. Year of the Cobra keeps the songs relatively tight, and they show a lot of range on this album as well. Then they followed it up with this year's self-titled album, which I think is also excellent. It might even be better, it's just kind of too new for me to decide, but if you enjoy Ash and Dust, definitely check this one out too. Next, we're going back to where this whole doom thing started, Birmingham, England. We're talking about an album from 2019, but a band that started way before then, and is one of the most significant bands in funeral doom. So in the last video, I went through most of the main doom subgenres, but I couldn't fit in funeral doom without making the video just ridiculously long. So let's do a quick rewind here and talk about this subgenre that's been gaining more and more popularity. Funeral doom started in the early 90s, very close to the time death doom was becoming a thing. It's almost a different take on what death doom could be, with typically growled vocals, doom riffs, and very slow tempos. And I mean very, very slow. At a time when most metal was considered extreme based on how fast it was, funeral doom went for the opposite. Trying to make something that was extreme, yet ponderously slow and dark, it can sometimes feel like the intention is more to create an ambient soundscape that feels like a desolate and mournful plane of existence is stretching out around you. Often, funeral doom songs will be quite lengthy, anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 or 40. Albums also tend to be quite long. While I'm usually pretty strict about listening to complete albums, that's often more funeral doom than I really need at a time. And I'll listen to either disc 1 or disc 2, then move on to something less depressive and oppressive. For many doom fans though, funeral doom is their favorite type of metal, and they thrive on these long and sometimes highly repetitive soundscapes. So I'm not going to do a full history here, but I will cover a few of the funeral doom essentials that you ought to explore if you're first getting into this style. First, definitely Thergothon's only album, Stream from the Heavens. This is usually considered the first official funeral doom album. Some of the other important early works are Skepticism's Stormcrow Fleet, which uses what sounds like a church organ to make what sounds a lot like a black mass or a very morose funeral ceremony. And you of course have Funeral, who may have influenced the name of the genre. Funeral's second album, Tragedies, incorporates clean female vocals, which shifts the tone of the music from the feeling you get with the usual harsh vocals. And not part of the first wave, but you'd also be well off checking out Ahab, who creates nautical funeral doom, and who makes albums that are narratives based around different nautical books. Evoken, who have been releasing consistently strong albums since the late 90s, is another good one. Mournful Congregation, who are a bit more recent, but who've gained a lot of respect in the subgenre. And Bellwitch, who are arguably one of the reasons funeral doom has gotten so popular over the last decade, thanks to their album Mirror Reaper. This one is a bit on the long and repetitive side for me personally, but I do have to say that is one of the best covers of all time. But the album that makes my list of favorites is by Esoteric, who have been part of the funeral doom style since its early days, with their first release in 1993. They take their time with releases, and each release tends to be a gargantuan project, often too long to fit on a single CD, and none of their albums fit on one record. My very favorite is The Maniacal Veil from 2008, and what sets them apart from a lot of funeral doom to my ear is the musical complexity. While the songs are very long, and they do create a dense and heavy funereal atmosphere, they also evolve through melody and tempo changes that build tension and provide some climaxes. Who doesn't like a good climax? It sorts out the issue that I personally have with some funeral doom, in that it sometimes feels like the focus is more on creating and sustaining a mood than on making music that has a clear structure and will actually entertain you on listening to it. Esoteric's newest album, A Pyrrhic Existence, is an example of funeral doom done the way I like it. And while it's not my very favorite release by Esoteric, I also wouldn't call it a dip in quality. It starts with Descent, which is a high point of the album for me, ironically. This opener sets the scene, which sounds like an underworld full of pain and torture. The song has its own ebbs and flows, with the slowness of some passages juxtaposed with moments of soaring guitar, drum changes, sudden guitar noise, all providing a satisfying release after the building of all of that tension. On a larger scale, this is the kind of thing you can expect from the rest of this 98-minute album. 98 minutes, 6 songs, that's funeral doom for you. Esoteric might not be the easiest starting point for getting into funeral doom, and for that I might recommend Ahab's The Call of the Wretched Sea. Ahab remains one of my 2 favorite funeral doom bands alongside Esoteric, or you could start at the beginning if you wanted with the first Thergothon album, and explore from there if you want a clearer sense of the genre's history. But next, let's go to Ontario, Canada, for another duo that's also a couple. Vile Creature formed in 2014, and since then have explored sludge, doom, and drone metal. This queer couple didn't find much acceptance in their local scene early on, but gradually managed to build a reputation anyway, and their 2020 album brought them a lot more attention because it's fucking stunning. Glory Glory, Apathy Took Helm is an album focused on fighting oppression with its oppressive riffs. There's so much rage in the vocals delivered by Vic Creature. They sound somewhere between a hardcore shout and a black metal shriek, but absolutely drenched in a venomous anger. But instead of nihilism or wizards, you have songs about the fight against apathy, you have songs about the inevitability of death and finding hope despite it. The 2 title tracks, Glory Glory and then Apathy Took Helm, are the highest peak of this album for me. Glory Glory, unlike the tracks that have led up to it, is a beautiful choir sounding celestial and full of beauty and light. This choir track then morphs into something much more complex on the second half, when the band's blackened, drony sludge metal building upon these melodies of the first half, and melding their sound with these celestial choir vocals to make something that at once is both beautiful and filthy sounding, angry and ethereal. It's really a chef's kiss musical blending they pull off here, and it's the highest peak for me on an already impressive album. For a very different style of doom, let's go to New Zealand, with Remina making a style that is infused more heavily with darkwave and melancholy synth than you'd expect in the doom genre. This gives their sound a gothic edge, and this would make them an easier entry point into doom for those of you who enjoy bands like Twin Tribe, She Passed Away, Boy Harsher, probably some 80s goth and darkwave artists too. Remina is the duo of Mike Lamb and Heike Lungens. They've worked together previously on the project Lightfield Reverie, and between them have been quite a few other bands. Although Lightfield Reverie feels similar enough that if you like this, I'd recommend also exploring that. I find this album very emotional, romantic, and consistently beautiful. However, you won't find it as heavy as most of the albums on this list. I suggest not ignoring it just because of that though. You'll find great songs with complex structures and the emotional power of doom throughout. Anyway, Remina is a very different breed of doom, and if you want a sense of the scope of what's happening in doom right now, you can't leave out this unique and wonderful duo. And now from one exotic location to another, we travel from New Zealand to Indianapolis, Indiana. Mother of Graves is literally from where I grew up, the crossroads of America, so I completely understand why they want to growl and beat on their instruments really hard. Mother of Graves make melodic death doom that is a bit reminiscent of some of that first wave of death doom bands, Catatonia, the Peaceville 3, yet it doesn't feel like a nostalgic retread of that scene. It captures that scene's original power, but to my ear it ramps up the death elements, yet maintains the level of despondent melancholy captured during that early 90s scene. The keyboards and the heavy impact of the vocals also set this band's work apart for me. I was a fan of their debut album, Where the Shadows Adorn, from 2022, but I wouldn't say I was obsessed with it. Their 2024 follow-up, however, The Periapt of Absence, shows a big improvement across the board. It's very confident and memorable, without any weak points in the track listing. I find the choruses more memorable, the melody's a little stronger, the song structures feel a little more rewarding as well. I'm not saying it to put their first album down, I'm just trying to emphasize how much I feel like they've grown just getting to their second album. It feels like an improvement across the board. I'm going to be keeping a close watch on what Mother of Graves does from this point. And then we have Mansion. Mansion is a fascinating band from Finland, and we're going to talk about their menacing second album, 2023's Second Death. In English, Mansion means big house, but in Finnish, their name means Kartano, and Kartano was the last name of one of the leaders of a small Christian cult that was around from the 1920s to about the 1950s. The members of the band Mansion claim to be modern members of Kartanoism, and the lyrics of their music explore the day-to-day experiences of being in a cult where sex is completely forbidden, even between married couples, can't imagine why that didn't catch on, and where you believe Jesus could be showing up literally any minute now for the judgment. It feels dark and gloomy and paranoid. You have these wonderfully contrasting male and female vocals, and despite the near growl of the male vocals, it's really the female vocals that feel the most haunting and sinister, even though you can make out every word. The lyrics are creepy, although I could see some people finding the specificity of the song topics to detract from the experience. You can still interpret what the band is conveying, but the narratives of the songs are often very specific and clear. For me, as someone intrigued by creepy cults, I think it's a really creative approach and something different from any other doom metal I've ever heard. In a way, their focus on staying in character in interviews and press releases reminds me of Laibach, but instead of a warning about how easily fascism can appeal to people, it's a warning about religious zealousness and where that can lead. A message that I think is just as important right now. Speaking of cults, I'd like to thank the channel supporters on Patreon. Patreon subscribers help support the channel directly. They get input on future videos and get to see all the videos ad-free over on Patreon, ahead of when they're posted on YouTube. They also get additional content, extra playlists, behind-the-scenes content, and the Eclecticism podcast. In this video, I want to specially shout out subscriber Alex Kinchin. So here's one that's not exactly a deep cut, but let's talk about Thou from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I could spend a video going through this band's storied career, which has shown them getting progressively bigger and more well-respected among sludge doom fans over the course of their 20 years, and many projects. So we'll just focus on their sixth full-length album, Umbilical, from 2024. This is heavy as fuck sludge, oppressive and full of self-rage, yet it's also weirdly catchy and accessible. Maybe this is because of the song's more or less traditional structures, or the way all of this noise is swirling around strong grooves. It might be the most aggressive and least inviting album on the list at first, but if you wade into the sludge for long enough to acclimate to the temperature and the feeling of it on your legs, it's a hell of a lot of fun. Even compared to other Louisiana sludge greats like I Hate God and Crowbar, the vocals on here sound vicious and almost inhuman. And that with the driving grooves and the sheer noise of all that guitar feedback, the anthemic quality of many of these choruses, they sound like the final boss of sludge on this album. And that's not to say it's hands down my favorite sludge album, but it is one of them. And it really is one of the best achievements in sludge in a good long while to my ear. So if you like your doom nightmarish yet groovy, and you somehow missed all of the attention this album got last year, go check out Thou's excellent Umbilical. There's another band who got a lot of praise last year that was well-deserved, Crypt Sermon. Crypt Sermon formed in Philadelphia in 2013, and they've been making a very powerful, epic brand of doom since the beginning of their career. Their third album, The Stygian Rose, showed them expanding upon that epic doom to incorporate more traditional heavy metal and even a bit of progressive metal complexity. Their sound and their focus seems even more honed and perfected, with a keyboardist added to their lineup. The album has a very high fantasy feel, focused on some mystic or sorcerer who's delving into the occult. The album builds to a really powerful 1-2 punch at the end with Scrying Orb, which has one of the most memorable doom choruses in decades to my ear. The album flies by because it's so strong from beginning to end, with powerful riffs and dynamic songs that to me capture a lot of what I like best about doom and heavy metal. And now for another one of the older bands on this list, but one of the newest ones to me, let's talk about Conan. Named after the Robert E. Howard Gym Bro, Conan formed in Liverpool back in 2006. They spent most of that time as a trio, and have been a well-respected doom band, performing their self-described caveman battle doom throughout that time. Their newest album, this year's Violence Dimension, doesn't drastically change what they're doing. It just evolves it a bit while trying to find even heavier and more pummeling yet simple sludge. Instead of feeling like it's trying to scare you off, it sounds like it's trying to make you swole, make you want to go into battle and bludgeon someone with a big ol' hammer. This band is newer to me than most on this list. They somehow just escaped my radar until this new album somehow. So I haven't gone that deep into their past works. I've really been enjoying Violence Dimension though, even if some of the songs outstay their welcome just a little bit for me. But with that said, I enjoy every song on this album. And am I the only one who listens to the vocals of John Davis and thinks of Ad Rock from Beastie Boys? If you want to dig into a heavy but less gloomy sounding sludge metal, Conan are a band you definitely need to hear. And from one of the most clear-cut doom bands on this list to one of the most avant-garde, let's talk about Divide and Dissolve, a duo from Australia. The duo is guitarist and saxophonist Takea Reed and percussionist Sylvie Nahil. This is instrumental avant drone that incorporates more than your traditional doom instrumentation, by a long shot. You might have guessed that when I mentioned they have a saxophonist. While the music is mostly instrumental, they also weave poetry through some of their work. Both of them have Aboriginal ancestry, and this shared heritage is a part of their band's identity. Takaya Reed has a background in classical music, and saxophone was her first instrument. She says that when she started playing the guitar, she just naturally found herself being drawn to incredibly heavy, slow tones that you could feel reverberating through your body. Their first few albums came together fairly quickly, in an environment that sounds a lot like just jamming and being happy with what they were coming up with together. But their last couple projects, Gaslit and Insatiable, have felt more structured and composed. I love the way on Insatiable, their newest album, they're able to shift between heavy and lumbering drone doom passages, and then songs of saxophone and violin, without even having that foundation of percussion behind it. These passages show their classical background and give their work a style that I find very unique and special, shifting fluidly between heavy and almost minimalist classical ambient or something. Hearing them talk about their band, it sounds like making this heavy music is both a spiritual and a political experience. Doom metal with the goal of abolishing white supremacy and restoring indigenous land to its original inhabitants. These are some big goals, but it's inspiring some really big music too. This is going to be an unusual listening experience for pretty much anyone, whether your background is metal, classical, or jazz, but I think you should definitely try it out and see what you think. I like it quite a bit. And then second to last, this is probably my most listened to album from this year, and it's for sure my most listened to metal album this year. Messa is an Italian doom band who formed in 2014. Their members came from a wide range of backgrounds, including prog bands, black metal, punk, blues, death metal, and grindcore. This broad knowledge and experience has all been channeled into a project that has doom as its foundation, but that does go beyond that, with every album so far weaving in disparate inspirations. There's definitely jazz structures and blues guitar influences in their earlier works. Then on their third album, Close, Messa incorporated Middle Eastern instruments like the oud into their sound. This album explored microtonality as well, finding a unique and beautiful take on doom that is what put them on my radar in the first place. I'll say that after discovering this album, I've completely fallen in love with their previous albums as well. They don't have a weak point thus far in what they've put out, and their second album is wonderful and really unique as well. Then in 2024, they dropped The Spin, and this album feels like it was made for me. Without losing that doominess, they're exploring a touch of 80s goth and death rock, writing more compact songs than they have in the past, and delivering what I think is their strongest work to date. They're exploring synth soundscapes here, and effortlessly making these new elements blend with their already eclectic range of influences, which creates a unique and stunning album. And then on top of all of that, Fire on the Roof is my most listened to new song this year. This is a soaring, gorgeous song that shows off the range of Sarah Bianchin's voice, makes use of an almost cyberpunk sounding synth rhythm, and it has the most memorable chorus for me of the year. I haven't been able to get enough of this album or this band. They're quickly becoming not just one of my favorite modern doom bands, but maybe just one of my favorite modern bands, full stop. And let's wrap up with an album that is fresh and hot off the press. This one came out while I was working on this script, so I've only had a couple weeks to listen to it, but it's quickly become one of my favorites from this year. Faetooth is a three-piece fairy doom band from LA. They started as a four-piece in 2019, and their debut album was Remnants of the Vessel. But we're really here to talk about their new album, which came out on September 5th. Labyrinthine is a gorgeous blending of heavy doom and sludgy riffs, with a softer ethereal and sometimes dream pop feeling sound. I've seen the word doomgaze used with this band, and this makes sense to me, although it also has a lot in common with, I guess, alternative metal. But they're a very distinct band. I could see them appealing to fans of Chelsea Wolfe, Holy Fawn, or even adventurous shoegaze listeners, in addition to those of you who enjoy doom or sludge. I've quickly become a big fan of Faetooth, and I'm really excited to see where they go from here. So there you have it, 14 modern doom bands who are making great music right now, or within the last few years anyway. And I think they illustrate at least part of the range that you can get with modern doom music, and I really could have kept going. Bands like Pallbearer and Bell Witch are big influences in modern doom, but at a certain point you've got to stop writing and actually film the video and put it out. So please let me know in the comments, who are your favorite modern doom bands? And do you know of any obscure doom bands more people should be checking out right now? Remember, there is a playlist in the description if you want to hear samples of all of these bands. And just so you know, this is the final episode of Eclecticism Season 1. I'll be taking my first actual break from the channel since I started it, and giving myself about a month to focus on some other things, but I'll be back before you know it. So if you want to explore music with me, then like and subscribe. Join us on Patreon if you want to support more content like this. Thank you for watching Eclecticism, and I will see you next time.